Okay, this is section 4.8, and we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting complex numbers and what are complex numbers. So let's first discuss here quickly, and I'm in your notes in section 4.8, so if you find, you have a bunch of 4.8 notes, find the add and subtract part. But let's talk about what is a complex number first. So a complex number is a number that you can write in the form of a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers. If b is equal to 0, and the number a plus bi is a real number. Okay, so now here's the deal with the complex numbers. A complex number is a combination of a real number and an imaginary number. If you remember, imaginary numbers are numbers with the letter I in them. Okay, so a complex number is when I take a real number and I put it with an imaginary number, either adding or subtracting. So, for example, this is a complex number, 5 plus 3i. Or it could be -1 minus 2i. Those are both complex numbers because they have a real number and they have an imaginary number together. Real number, imaginary number together. Okay, so complex numbers, that's what they are. Now, let's talk about adding and subtracting complex numbers, okay? So I've kind of put this list in here for you, and this is actually really, really simple to do, okay? So as we're looking at adding and subtracting complex numbers, I kind of put some steps here for you. First step is you will add or subtract the real parts of the expression. So take your real numbers, add them together, or subtract them, vice versa, whatever it might be. Then you're going to add or subtract your imaginary parts of the expression. Take your imaginary numbers and add those together. Okay. The real and the imaginary parts are not like terms, so you cannot add them. Okay. So you cannot add them or subtract them together. So essentially, you're treating that, you've done this before a bazillion times. You're just treating this like, okay, one of these, whichever ones have variables, I'm going to put together. Whichever ones don't have variables, I'm going to put together. And then I always want the real number first, the imaginary number second. Okay, now, one other very important thing here is that if you subtract, you might want to underline this or circle it, but if you subtract, you have to distribute the negative first, then combine the like terms. Okay, so let's get to some examples and see what some examples might look like. All right, first example here is number 1, and again, I'm in your 4.8 notes as we look at number 1. So the very first thing that I want to do is figure out, okay, is it add or subtract? Well, in this case, we're adding. So if I'm going to add, all I'm going to do is combine my like terms. So I'm going to take my real numbers, 4 and -4, and combine them together. Wait, that's 0. And then I'm going to take -3i and +3i. Those guys are like terms because they have the same variable and the same exponent. So when those guys are like terms, -3i and +3i, well, that's 0 as well. So I'm just going to put a 0i here. Well, anytime I have zeros and 0i's, my answer here is just 0. Okay? So in this case, I don't have an imaginary number left. All I have is the real number 0. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, again, I'm adding. So because I'm adding, all I'm going to do is combine my like terms. 7 and -3 gives me +4. And then 2i and 1i is 3i. So I end up with a complex number of 4 plus 3i. Again, remember, on these, your real number always goes first. So this real number goes first, the imaginary number goes second. Okay, let's take a look at an example of another one here. Okay, number 3. Again, I'm adding. So because I'm adding, I'm going to combine my like terms. So I got -3 and +3. That's 0. 9i and 9i is 18i. And because I have 0 as a real number, I'm just going to write this as 18i. Okay? So as you can see, these are by no means complicated. We're really just combining like terms. The parts where things are going to get a little bit different here is when I get into this subtraction problem. So subtraction here, I see that it's a subtraction. So remember, if it's subtraction, I have to distribute first. So I'm going to have 5 and minus 3i. Negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. And negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4i. And now I can combine my like terms. So once I distribute, then I can combine my like terms. 5 and 2 is 7. Negative 3i and negative 4i is negative 7i. And that is my answer. All right. Example number 5, again, is subtraction. So I'm going to take this subtraction and I'm going to distribute that negative through. So this is 8 plus 6i. That first one doesn't change. Negative 1 times positive 8 is negative 8. And negative 1 times negative 6i is positive 6i. So again, we're going to combine in like terms. 8 and negative 8, that's a 0. And positive 6i and positive 6i is positive 12i. Again, I don't need the 0 there. So my final answer is 12i. Okay, so this should complete the problems here with adding and subtracting imaginary numbers. Don't worry about number 6. You won't have any problems like that. So you should be able to complete your class kick problems now.